Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about World of Warcraft. There's been plenty of announcements with regards to retail, with regards to Classic, and with regards to Classic Plus Season of Discovery, which is going to be my personal focus going forward. But before I get into the subject of Season of Discovery, Classic Plus, as it really is an all but name, let's talk a bit about retail, let's talk about Cataclysm. So, with regards to retail, Blizzard has announced the Worldsoul Saga, so it's going to be a series of expansions focused on the story of the Worldsoul. Because we do have that Sword of Sargeras sticking out like a sore thumb in Sisyphus. I mean, Sisyphus has been a sore thumb in World of Warcraft for a very long time, ever since it was introduced, but now it's even more so as that soul almost killed Azeroth, which kinda is technically alive. It's a bit complicated, like, hasn't exactly been born yet as a Titan, and apparently the Titans are actually going to be coming back to Azeroth. What will happen with with Sargeras? What will happen with Illidan? Given everything, that's a different discussion, and I'm sure that to some extent at least they'll be mentioned. But here's the thing, while the cinematic that they produced was great, and the cinematic team of Blizzard is certainly one of the highlights of the company, like they've always done a good job over the years, and to the point like a lot of people I imagine would really like Blizzard to do a movie based on those kind of cinematics. But regardless though, while the cinematic team did deliver, I think the problem with retail and is one that Blizzard is not going to fix with these expansions. Let me talk about this. I've played every single WoW expansion with the exception of Battle for Azeroth, to an extent or another. I'm not particularly interested in playing through these expansions that Blizzard just announced, because I know how it's going to play out. And I've tried multiple times, with multiple expansions, with Dragonflight, with Legion, with Shadowlands. I've tried multiple times to really get into WoW, and every single time over the last couple of years, I have experienced the same thing. It's gotten to the point that unless something fundamentally changes in the way Blizzard is designing World of Warcraft, I am simply not interested in spending my money, given that I know it was going to play out the exact same way as it has before. So let me explain what the issue is. You level up, and then you start doing dungeons at max level, you do some Mythic Plus, you do raiding, and then you defeat raiding. Whichever level of Mythic Plus and whichever level of raiding do it at, you do defeat the content in the game. And then you're faced with this situation where you can spend a significant amount of time grinding your heart out. Yes, grinding for pugs if you don't have a guild, and if you're starting from scratch in WoW, you won't have a guild, or struggling to find a guild, which is a lot more difficult than you might think, especially if you're playing a tank like myself. It can be very brutal finding any kind of worthwhile guild to join. You struggle for that, you struggle to establish connections with people, you struggle with the social aspect, because there isn't really a social aspect in regards to retail WoW at the moment. You struggle with all those issues, you grind your heart out to beat the same content that you already have defeated on a higher difficulty. And I'll be honest, I really don't think that's worth it. I've done Mythic raiding, and it can be great in an organized group where you have a lot of the social aspect playing out, where you have the community aspect playing out. That can be great. But when you're playing in a pug, when you're playing with randoms, a lot of the enjoyment you have with the game really goes down the toilet. And the problem with retail World of Warcraft, far more so than Classic, don't get me wrong, Classic is not perfect in this respect either, but the problem with retail World of Warcraft is it's not conducive towards creating a great community of players, because of the segregation that exists between Mythic Plus players, Mythic Raiders, and everyone else. Like, someone who's doing a Mythic Plus, like plus 16, for instance, is not going to be on the same level as someone who's doing Mythic 0. It's a clear-cut difference in the player base. And it leads to a lot of toxicity, far more so than I've seen in any other period in WoW. Like, toxicity has always been a thing in World of Warcraft, but I have played World of Warcraft since vanilla. I have seen every stage of this game. I've seen it in retail, I've even seen it on fun servers. You know what's interesting to think about those kind of servers, and even Classic to an extent, though less so, what's interesting to see is like people do act to some extent. While it's not one-to-one, people do act in vanilla as they kind of did back in the days of real vanilla. There's a greater sense of community, a social aspect, than is on retail. That's just a fact. Like, the way people play these games hasn't necessarily changed that much. Sure, we've gotten far better at playing the game. We've optimized the hell out of each other. But fundamentally, the kind of social experiences these games create even today is far more similar than you might believe as it was back in the day. And this is the problem in retail. Like, I played hundreds and hundreds of days in World of Warcraft because of that social aspect. And I feel as long as Blizzard keeps the segregation in the player base between different skill levels, as long as they focus on this, and they just keep adding content without any kind of consideration towards fixing this issue, I think retail is going to remain a broken, messy piece of crap. And I'm simply not interested in playing it again, because for the last few expansions, this is the kind of experience I've had. I just don't want to deal with it anymore. That's where I stand on that issue. Now, with respect to Classic, we are going to get Cataclysm, and of course there are going to be some interesting things happening with Cataclysm. Do I think Cataclysm is worth playing as an expansion? Absolutely, I do believe so. The reason I think Cataclysm is worth it, I think the way the classes play in Cataclysm is generally better than they do in Wrath. There's a better balancing, there's better design. Like, I play a Paladin, and I've played both Prot and Ret in Cataclysm, and I have to say, Protection Paladin and Retribution Paladin is night and day better in Cataclysm than it is in Wrath. Don't get me wrong, the power is certainly there in Wrath, but it's just the quality of the gameplay is significantly better in Cataclysm. And in general, a lot of classes do play better in Cataclysm than they do in Wrath. So from the perspective of class design and class gameplay, Cataclysm is better. What about raids? Let's talk about this for a second. How is raiding in Cataclysm? How are dungeons in Cataclysm? Well, I think dungeons and raids in Cataclysm, to a certain point, are pretty damn amazing, actually. The Dragon Soul raid, not so much, but Firelands is an amazing raid, and the first raiding tier of Cataclysm is, honestly, from my perspective, one of the best raiding tiers Blizzard has ever released. So you have two great raiding tiers in Cataclysm. There are the first two raiding tiers, and then you have Dragon Soul. Dragon Soul is just not a great raid. It wasn't a great way to end that expansion. It was a disappointment, but to be honest, I think like Cataclysm is very much worth playing, even if you're not playing Wrath right now. There's obviously a lot of catch-up mechanics, and there's a lot of ways to get started with regards to Cataclysm, and Blizzard is going to make things better from that perspective based on some of the things I've seen. Don't expect to enjoy Dragon Soul, but at the very least, you are going to have a great experience in the first two raiding tiers, I think. And what's interesting about those first two raiding tiers, yes, people are going to defeat them very easily, though some people should, there's a lot of people that look at how quickly guilds, defeat the Lich King heroic, and I'm going to say, you think those guilds just walked into Icecrown Citadel and just killed Lich King in 90 minutes, while months of practice, and while years of experience playing on private servers? Of course they had that kind of experience. That's how they were able to do it, because for them it's basically farm content at this stage. It's nothing new. So it's not really surprising. With Cataclysm, though, there are certainly some mechanics which are going to slow people down, and I think, like, overall, the boss design, like, Ragnaros is an amazing boss, for instance. Alakir is an amazing boss. Nefarian is an amazing boss. Oh, I can't wait for people to get to the council boss fights. There's two different council bosses in the first raiding tier of Cataclysm, and people are probably going to hard wipe on both of them, especially the one just before Cho'Gall. So, enjoy dealing with that. I do believe Cataclysm is going to be worth playing when it comes out. And that leaves the discussion for Season of Discovery. And then finally, we have Classic Plus and all but name in Season of Discovery. Now, Blizzard is keeping a lot of its cards close to its chest with respect to this one, because I think that Season of Discovery is the most interesting thing that came out of BlizzCon this year. Like a new expansion for World of Warcraft, not really surprising. Bit surprising that they decided to make it a series of expansions as a saga, the Worldsoul saga, but still. Not surprising at all. Cataclysm, again, not surprising. It was the obvious next step. Some people question whether or not they would make Cataclysm. I am not surprised at all. But with Season of Discovery, we do have a significant shift compared to how Blizzard has decided to do things. I'm personally not the kind of guy who's interested in hardcore. I don't think that's really that great of experience from my perspective. It can be fun, don't get me wrong, but it's not really appealing to me. And actually, a lot of things about vanilla are not especially appealing. One of the problems that I've had with vanilla for a fairly long period of time is that in order to get into vanilla, you have that horrible leveling experience from 1 to 60. Amazing leveling experience back in the day, not so much right now. And then leveling professions, doing all the grinding, not a great experience to go through. Well, Blizzard is going to stagger that out. So we're going to level from 1 to 25. Then we're going to raid, and however long that's going to last, 1, 2 months, hopefully at most. And then we're going to get more content and increase level cap. And then we move on from that, and eventually we're going to get to 60. I think this will help solve a lot of the issues that you do have when something like this comes along. Because one of the problems that has existed with Vanilla and Burning Crusade and even Wrath is the horrible leveling experience you have to go for, or that we've done multiple times if you've played on one of those fun servers. But we've done this before. It's not a great experience to engage in at the moment. So this is a great way for Blizzard to really spice things up. And on top of that, another thing they're doing, beyond staggering the leveling experience, beyond giving us raid content which didn't exist before, or converting dungeons into raids like Black Phantom Depths of Dead Mines and Wailing Caverns are still going to be dungeons, I imagine. BFD is going to be a raid, which will mean that people will actually do it. Because there's a lot of content in Vanilla that people would just skip through when they were leveling normally. In Classic, that's not going to be the case here. Maybe Zul'Farrak will be a raid. I don't know. We will have to wait and find out how that's going to play out. Maraudon as a raid, anyone? I don't know. Or Blackrock Depths. Who knows what could end up happening with respect to that. There's a lot of possibilities that Blizzard could go with respect to this. But what I find the most interesting aspect is with the rune mechanic. Now, Blizzard does state that they have 4 leveling phases planned for Season of Discovery. So we're going to have, according to Wowhead, the first level cap is going to be 25, then phase 2 is going to be 40, then phase 3 50, and then phase 4 60. So Maraudon or Zul'Farrak most likely. I imagine Maraudon more so than Zul'Farrak. At level 40, who knows? Maybe Zul'Farrak will be the level 41, or they could obviously use Scarlet Monastery. Though I'm not sure that would work. Though they could obviously don't take into consideration, like they could potentially do multiple raids per leveling phase. But what I do find the most interesting about this is with regards to the runes. So you'll have to discover runes, and this is going to certainly help foster a sense of community, because one of the things like a game like Dark Souls, for instance, does well is that a lot of the secrets are hidden. So what people end up doing is they go to social media, they find the information there, and you get people talking with one another, or people discover things that others didn't, that kind of stuff. So we do get runes that are going to be attached to item slots, and there's various runes available, and I think this is going to certainly improve the gameplay experience, the class experience that we have, because quite a lot of classes in vanilla just don't play all that well. So this is adding a great deal of variety, and it's making a lot more things viable than they were before. So tanking paladins are going to be a thing in classic Season of Discovery. So we get, just examples, let me just go over the paladin runes that are going to be available. We get Seal of Martyrdom, which is basically going to act as Seal of Blood, but it is going to be a cleave type seal, so it's going to be useful for AoE tanking. On top of that, you lose health equal to 10% damage inflicted. This is not going to be all that significant, But while the seal active, your party members within 40 yards each gain mana equal to all the damage you take. Holy shit, that's going to be pretty damn significant. And when you unleash the seal, you will judge an enemy instant causing 70% weapon damage at the cost of health equal to 10% damage inflicted. We get Divine Storm on chest, which is 110% weapon damage to 4 enemies within 8 yards and heals 3 party or rain members. Then you get the Horn of Lordaeron, which increases total strength and agility of all party members within 30 yards. I imagine that's the holy one. Like, Prot would go for Seal of Martyrdom, Ret would go for Divine Storm, and Holy would go possibly for... Holy would possibly go for Horn of Lordaeron, though that's not necessarily the only one. Then you have Aegis, which is a block ability. How important it's going to be, like, this is probably going to be one of the choices you're going to have as Prop Paladin. It's like, do you focus on survivability, or are you going to focus on, like, Aegis, which increases your block value by 30% and damaging melee and ranged attacks against you have a 10% chance to increase your block by 30%. Not stacking with... redoubts. And these are all chests, and you only have one rune that I imagine you can apply to a particular slot. So remember that aspect, because you're going to have to make some choices over here. Then you get the leg one, so you get Divine Sacrifice. That's going to be pretty powerful. You get the ability of Dispelling Fear and Sleep effects on nearby party members. Avenger Shield, which, yeah, it's Avenger Shield. Exorcist, which allows exorcism to be cast on any target and has 100% critical strike chance against undead and demons, and Rebuke, which is the same ability from Cataclysm, which is an interrupt. Then you finally have Gloves, Beacon of Light, yay, great stuff. Holy is going to be much more powerful. Then you get Crusader Strike on legs, and finally Hand of Reckoning, which improves Reckoning, and also you gain mana when healed by others equal to 25% of the amount healed. This is quite significant, and also has an Ardent Defender effect tacked on in it. So, Prop Paladin in vanilla content with new content added into the game, I'm game for that. There's some, and that's just the Paladin stuff. There's some pretty ridiculous things available over here, including one that I'm sure is gonna cause a lot of people to laugh out loud. Melee Hunter. Yeah, I kid you not. Melee Hunter. So, like, you get Flanking Strike, for instance, where you and your pet deal a simultaneous 100% melee damage, for instance. Or Carve, a sweeping attack that strikes all enemies in front of you. Melee Hunter is going to be a thing in Season of Discovery. When I saw this, when I saw people mentioning this, I had to laugh my ass off, and I couldn't stop, because the obvious conclusion that's going to happen from this, and this is so bloody incredible, Hunter with Thunder Fury in vanilla. Think on that. And that actually being a thing that would work. And not just like, a very... niche spec or a niche build that might work. No, it's going to be a main spec Hunter with Thunder Fury. Jesus, that's gonna be something else, isn't it? Anyway, I think Season of Discovery does create a bunch of interesting possibilities for World of Warcraft, and it's certainly something I am interested in playing. I'm not so interested in playing retail. Cataclysm, kind of on the fence. May play it, may not play it, but I'm certainly going to try out Season of Discovery. And here's the great thing about it. Because of the progressive leveling we have, where we're going to get 25 levels, then 15, then 10, and 10, you don't have to commit as much, right? Because one of the things that is the situation in WoW is, like, you really feel you have to commit a lot of time when something comes out. With the progressive leveling, you may be able to take it more slow, more chill, take your time, enjoy yourself, as opposed to feeling like you have a truckload of things you have to grind out in order to even get started with the game. That's one of the things I do like about it, and I think it's going to potentially lead to a good experience. The balancing of things, that's going to be a different thing. Like, they have to rebalance some of these things. Some of these things are going to be overpowered. they also have to potentially redesign the tier sets. That's going to be a different discussion. How is loot going to be handled from raiding? Completely different discussion as well. But I certainly think it's interesting. I do believe that it's worth trying. And this is something I've wanted for a while. Like, my perspective on something like this is, well, I personally think, like, TBC raiding with, like, Raft Talents would have been a great experience. This is probably the closest we're going to get from Blizzard. And who knows, maybe this will prove successful, unlike Season of Mastery. I don't know. We'll see. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more. Season of Discovery is coming at the end of this month, so on November 30th.